Some stories seem like easy open and shut cases. From the very beginning, it's clear who the culprit is, how they knew the victim, what their motive was. Case closed. But today's case is exactly not that. At first, it did feel like the assailant was obvious. Even those closest to him weren't surprised when they heard he'd been charged. Even the police on the scene that night knew something about this case was off. They said it themselves. Something wasn't adding up. But that suspect would soon walk free, and the story only gets stranger from there. Because this case doesn't just involve any victim. It involves Marianne Shockley, a brilliant entomologist, a respected professor at the University of Georgia, a woman who had built a name for herself in the STEM world, known for her mind, her drive, and her love for her two children. She was the kind of woman who didn't let much slip by her. Mistakes happen, of course, but a woman of this intelligence, of this capability, accidentally drowning in a hot tub? It doesn't make sense. And at first, people called it an accident, until the autopsy told another story, revealing what happened to Marianne that night was anything but accidental. And if this case needed to get any darker, one of the people who was with her that night would end up taking his own life not long after she died. What exactly happened in those final moments of Marianne Shockley's life? Why was someone charged and then later acquitted? Why does it feel like justice has never fully arrived in this case? And why, years later, do so many people still whisper about how strange it all was? Today, we're going behind the headlines to look at the death of Marianne Shockley, a mother, a scientist, and a woman who deserved so much more than what happened the night she died. Because some stories may look like open and shut cases, but not this one. And the closer you look, the stranger it becomes. Marianne Clopton Shockley wasn't just another academic or another professor at the University of Georgia. She was a force of nature. Born on August 14, 1975 in tiny Appalachia, Georgia, Marianne came into the world already surrounded by a family of scholars. But even in a family like that, her brilliance stood out. She shared a birthday with her sister and even their uncle. August 14th was a day for celebrating life, and Marianne lived hers with a kind of fearless curiosity that made everyone around her take notice. From the time she was young, Marianne saw the world through a different lens, a lens of science, of bugs, of ecosystems that most people never even notice. But it wasn't just that she was smart. She was driven to make the world better, and she did. She earned her PhD from the University of Georgia in 2009, but not long after, she returned to teach at the same university she graduated from, and spent nearly 2 decades pouring herself into students, colleagues, and the community around her. At UGA, Marianne wasn't just a professor in the entomology department, she was the beating heart of it. She dedicated her life to the field of entomology, the scientific study of insects and their role in our world. But for Marianne, it was more than studying bugs under a microscope. She believed insects held the key to a sustainable future, from protecting pollinators to exploring how edible insects could help fight hunger and malnutrition around the world. Her mission was to change how people saw insects, to move past the ick factor and see their power in healing our environment and feeding communities. For Marianne, insects weren't pests, they were potential, and she spent her career proving it. She organized community outreach, brought science into classrooms all over Georgia, and led UGA's beloved Bug Camp, where she made bugs exciting, not scary, for thousands of kids each summer. She was the kind of professor who could take a kid who was squeamish about insects and transform them into a child who saw wonder in the honeybee's wings or a spider's web. But her reach went far beyond Georgia. Marianne was a trailblazer and leader in the field of entomophagy, the practice of eating insects for sustainability and nutrition. She was passionate about it, seeing insects not as pests, but as a solution to food shortages and climate issues around the world. She spoke internationally and worked with organizations from North America to South America, advocating for a future where insects could help fight world hunger and improve health. She once said that the hesitation around eating insects was like the hesitation people used to have around sushi. New, unfamiliar, but full of potential. Marianne didn't just teach about insects, she wrote about them too. She published numerous academic papers and contributed to several books on the science and promise of edible insects, sharing her research and insights with the world. Her work wasn't just read in classrooms. It influenced international conversations about sustainable agriculture and how insects could help fight hunger across the globe. As one colleague put it, Marianne gave the edible insect industry credibility. She brought science, safety, and vision to a field that was easy to dismiss, and she turned it into a movement. She was a leader, a pioneer, a champion in every sense of the word, but the impact she had on the world wasn't just through her research and advocacy. It was the way she lifted the people around her. She impacted not only thousands of students at UGA, but also thousands of kids around the Georgia community who participated in her summer camps. She was known on the UGA campus as Doc Shock. Former students remember how she kept them from quitting, gave them opportunities to grow, and helped them find their paths, even paths that led them across the world, teaching others about insects, because Marianne had made them believe it mattered. If you were within 100 feet of Marianne Shockley, you were going to learn something about bugs or the environment, and you were going to leave feeling inspired.
She wanted everyone to get on board with eating bugs.
That was her thing.
It's her thing.
Marianne believed insects were a good protein source and could help solve world hunger. And today, Shakara is a graduate student with her own taste for bugs, a passion she wants others to experience.
So you're actually looking at whole crickets roasted. It reminds me of just eating sunflower seeds.
Let's have some.
And it's like a really good snack. It's bittersweet. I would love for her to actually be here, and I'm going to continue her legacy and her mission.
To Marianne.
To Marianne.
Outside of her work, Marianne's greatest love was her two children, Paul and Nora. Whether it was competing in rodeo events across Georgia, attending church together in Appalachia, or sneaking away for weekends on the Carolina coast, Marianne shared her adventurous spirit with her kids. They grew up identifying insects and helping out at bug camp, learning from their mother how to look at the world with wonder and curiosity. Marianne Shockley was the kind of person who used her brilliance to change lives, a mother who loved fiercely and a scientist whose work had a ripple effect felt around the world. So when news broke that she had died in a hot tub, allegedly by drowning, it didn't make sense. This was a woman who didn't miss details, a woman who was too careful, too intelligent for a simple accident, a woman who had an incredibly sharp, brilliant mind and spirit. She was a literal pioneer in the science community. Her death didn't add up. From the beginning, her death just didn't sound right, and everyone who knew her death wasn't an accident. Marianne Shockley left behind a legacy of education, advocacy, and scientific curiosity that touched thousands, from Georgia classrooms to international conferences. Her death, however, left behind a case that remains clouded with suspicion, confusion, and a sense of deep injustice. The unraveling of Marianne Shockley's bizarre and tragic death began just after 3 a.m. on Mother's Day, May 12, 2019, when Baldwin County Sheriff's deputies were called to the home of 69-year-old Clark Heindel, located off a quiet rural road near Milledgeville, Georgia, located roughly at 100 miles southeast of Atlanta. Clark himself had called 911, telling dispatchers that his friend, UGA professor Marianne Shockley, had apparently drowned in his hot tub. But when officers arrived that stormy night, what they found immediately raised more questions than answers. Marianne, a mother and beloved professor, was lying on the pool deck near the hot tub, bleeding from her head, while Clark was performing CPR on her. Her boyfriend, 41-year-old Marcus Lillard, was also there. And here's something that struck officers right away. All three were completely naked. From the start, deputies doubted the story that Marianne had simply drowned. For one, she had a giant gash on her head, and the entire scene felt off. Deputies began treating the case as a homicide almost immediately, focusing on the only two people there, her boyfriend Marcus and the homeowner Clark, both of whom's behavior they found odd from the very beginning. Officers were getting conflicting stories from the two men, so that's when they decided to separate them while they were being questioned. Marcus was put in a squad car during questioning, while a deputy was interrogating Clark near his pool where Marianne had drowned. Marcus claimed Marianne drowned in the hot tub while he had stepped away to gather firewood, but deputies weren't buying it, not with her massive head wound. Earlier that afternoon, according to Marcus, He and Marianne had been in a celebratory mood, bar hopping in Milledgeville to mark the end of the school year before heading to Clark's house. CCTV footage from a local restaurant, Aubrey Lane's, confirmed they had been out together. At Clark's, Marcus said the three of them drank some beers, smoked pot, listened to music, and even had an impromptu jam session. Clark on the accordion, Marcus on the conga drums, like they'd done numerous times before. But as the couple were about to leave, Clark offered them ecstasy, Marcus claims, and they all took it. After that, Marcus says things got fuzzy. He remembers Marianne and him getting into the hot tub around 9 p.m., and at one point, he got out with Marianne pleading, "Don't leave me." Marcus recalled there was fear in her voice, but he couldn't tell if it was paranoia from the drugs or something else. He says that when he went into the woods, claiming he wanted to recreate a scene from a documentary called The Last Shaman, where the protagonist takes part in bizarre rituals while on hallucinogens. Marcus says he simply laid down in the woods and didn't know how long he was out there for. When he returned to Clark's home, he says he found Marianne slumped over in the hot tub, her face under the water. He quickly pulled her out, and in the process, dropped her, which he claims is how she got the gash on her forehead. Clark, who Marcus says had been at the other end of the pool, came over and suggested calling 911, but Marcus resisted, convinced Marianne would be okay. But she wasn't okay. Her head was bleeding heavily, and it appeared Marianne wasn't breathing. The men took turns performing CPR, but still, nothing.
I can't remember anything past her saying, "Don't leave me."
What do you say to those who are hearing this story of a guy who has a history with drugs, who is claiming, I blacked out? Convenient, it sounds like.
The devil was at work. I mean, everything that he could have possibly done to line this thing up to make it confusing and deceitful, and it was all there.
You emerge from the woods. What is the first thing you remember seeing, hearing?
I didn't hear anything. I could see Marianne slumped down with her chin up to her nose underwater.
So why didn't Marcus call sooner? Some speculated it was because he was on probation for drug-related charges and didn't want police involvement while he was high on ecstasy, which would obviously be a violation of his probation. When deputies began questioning Marcus and Clark on the scene, Clark quickly asked for a lawyer and became uncooperative. While officers were still sorting out the scene and questioning Marcus in the squad car, the deputy who was supposed to be interrogating Clark, the homeowner, got a phone call in which he decided to answer. But unbeknownst to the deputy, Clark slipped back into the house unnoticed. Moments later, deputies heard a gunshot. They found Clark in his bathroom, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. On his kitchen counter, he left a handwritten note saying, "I don't know what happened with Marianne, but it was on my watch." His letter expressed sorrow for Marianne's family, but contained no admission of guilt, only instructions for his heirs on handling his possessions. One of the main questions of this case is, why would Clark kill himself if he wasn't guilty? Was it guilt over negligence, fear of what was to come, or something more sinister? Sheriff Bill Massey later admitted that Clark should never have been allowed to re-enter the house during questioning, and had deputies stopped him, Clark might still be alive, and the outcome of this entire case could have been different. After Clark's death, Marcus was the only surviving witness to what happened that night. What started as a party of three quickly only had one survivor. During this interview with GBI agents, they broke the news to Marcus about Clark's suicide, and videos show Marcus collapsing to the floor, visibly shaken.
During the time that I guess you were in the backseat of the car, Clark went inside his house and he committed suicide inside the house. You're kidding. I'm not kidding. Why would he do that? I don't know. That sheds some light, huh? I would never maybe near kissing to do that.
Marcus immediately began speculating, questioning what might have happened while he was in the woods. Did Clark get in the hot tub with Marianne? Did something happen between them? Marcus insisted he was innocent and said Marianne would not have hurt herself. Her family and friends agreed, saying Marianne was far too intelligent, too strong, to simply accidentally drown in a hot tub, even if she was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. However, since investigators believe that Marcus and Clark spent hours trying to revive Marianne before 911 was called, the exact timeline of her final moments remains murky, and the motive, if there is one, remains unknown. To this day, the questions about what really happened to Marianne Shockley in that hot tub on Mother's Day linger, and we're left wondering, why did Clark kill himself if he truly had nothing to hide? Almost immediately, investigators discovered Marcus Lillard's 2015 drug conviction, but Clark Heindel, even after his death, was also on their radar. Clark had his own issues and a checkered past. A retired psychologist, he had opened a local yoga studio called Good Karma, trying to reinvent himself. But a few years earlier, in 2017, Clark lost his license to practice psychology after a former female patient accused him of having a sexual relationship with her and allegedly gave her marijuana. Despite this, Sheriff Bill Massey said Clark was well liked and well known in Milledgeville. Many in the community sympathized with him, knowing he had gone through enough dark times, including losing his 6-year-old son to cancer many years earlier. After that tragedy, Clark had traveled to Peru multiple times to work with shamans, much like the character in the documentary The Last Shaman, which, oddly enough, was something he and Marcus reportedly discussed on the night Marianne died. The two men also talked about the film allegedly right before Marcus went off into the woods under his ecstasy spell. Investigators could find no clear evidence that Clark harmed Marianne. The sheriff believed the combination of Clark's past losses, the embarrassment of losing his license, and the shock of Marianne dying at his home while they were using drugs may have simply been too much for him to bear. It was one possible reason Clark took his own life that night. Meanwhile, the focus on Marcus Lillard was growing. On paper, Marcus seemed charming, a local car salesman and finance manager, who customers found personable and funny. People described him as a ladies' man, and he had been married and divorced twice. Even Marcus's own son admitted his dad had an aura that drew people in, especially women, and Marianne was one of them. Marcus and Marianne first met in the late 1990s when they were students at Georgia College, reconnecting in 2017 after nearly 2 decades apart. Marcus liked to tell people they were inseparable after that, and Marianne even invited him to join her on academic trips to China and Ecuador. Marcus said they were serious, reportedly dating on and off for about 2 years before her death. But not everyone believed their relationship was serious. Marianne's sister Ayla Crippen didn't think Marcus was the relationship type. She said their relationship seemed convenient for Marianne's busy lifestyle, and even some of Marianne's students felt uneasy around Marcus. One student, Shakara Majid, said she couldn't quite put her finger on it but felt something was off about him. But the biggest red flag came from Marcus's own son, Carson Lillard. Carson claims he warned Marianne about his father's Jekyll and Hyde personality, saying Marcus could be warm and charming one minute and terrifying and violent the next, especially when he was under the influence of drugs like cocaine. Carson said that when he heard Marianne had died, he immediately blamed his father, describing Marcus as a malignant narcissist. And Carson wasn't alone. Early in the investigation, one of Marcus's ex-girlfriends came forward, telling the sheriff she suspected Marcus had choked Marianne, and that was the true cause of her death, not by drowning. This ex told investigators that Marcus had a choking fetish, something that was part of their sex life, but she claimed that Marcus once choked her until she lost consciousness, and then left her lying there. Marcus didn't deny the choking, but insisted it was consensual, claiming he only applied light pressure on the carotid arteries and that his ex was exaggerating about the full extent of it. When it came to Marianne, Marcus said he tried choking her during sex only once, and she didn't like it, so he never did it again. But Marianne's sister, Ayla, didn't buy it. She said, "I believe they were having sex, and he choked her, and that's what caused her death." While rumors swirled around the small town that Marianne had died in a hot tub and Marcus was in jail, investigators were waiting on the autopsy results. The day after Marianne's death, the results came back and they were damning. The medical examiner ruled that Marianne died of asphyxia due to strangulation, not drowning. She had burst blood vessels in her eyes, clear signs of homicide. The medical examiner ruled the professor's death as a homicide, and Sheriff Bill Massey noted that the scene at Clark's home felt ritualistic or a seance or something, with Clark reportedly shaking hydrangea branches around Marianne's body in what some described as a bizarre spiritual gesture. But again, keep in mind that both Clark and Marcus were under the influence of drugs and alcohol when Marianne reportedly died. Given the autopsy findings, the odd scene, the information from Marcus's ex-girlfriend, the focus of the investigation shifted fully onto Marcus Lillard. The GBI requested another interview with him, and Marcus agreed, still not asking for a lawyer at first. He insisted he didn't know what happened, but as soon as he realized he was the main suspect, he quickly requested legal counsel. That's when investigators told Marcus he was under arrest for the murder of Marianne Shockley. After Marianne's death, Marcus Lillard kept saying he didn't know what happened that night, but the very next day he was charged with her murder. Nearly 2 years later, in March 2021, a grand jury formally indicted him on 4 counts, including felony murder, aggravated assault, involuntary manslaughter, and reckless conduct. He was denied bond and sat in jail for almost 3 years, with the case dragging on because of COVID delays. When the trial finally began in April 2022, prosecutors argued that Marcus strangled Marianne while the two were having sex in the hot tub, but Marcus and his defense insisted he didn't hurt her and that the drugs, alcohol, and heat from the hot tub might have killed her. The trial was chaotic. Prosecutors brought in 6 of Marcus's ex-girlfriends, and each of them told the jury the same disturbing story. Marcus liked to choke them during sex, and at least 2 said he choked them until they blacked out. But Marcus's lawyer argued it was all consensual, so these testimonials should have nothing to do with Marianne's death.
I went out with Marcus a few times back in the fall of 2016. One night we were having sex and he put his hands around my neck.
You said he did choke you at times?
Mm-hmm.
He did try to choke me. That was something that he was into. I stopped him twice. It's not something that I'm into. I don't like it. It scares me.
Assistant District Attorney Tammy Coffey believes that after the couple got in the hot tub, they engaged in sex, which is when she believed that Marcus choked Marianne for too hard and for too long. But there actually wasn't clear evidence in the autopsy that suggested that Marianne had sexual intercourse that night.
For too long. This would not occur. And the evidence will show that there's no sex that occurred that night. There's none. There's a sex kit done. There's no DNA in her. There's no signs of any kind of sex.
However, according to Assistant District Attorney Nancy Malcor, there wasn't clear evidence of sexual activity the night Marianne Shockley died because they believe that since Marianne's body had been in that hot tub for hours, that type of evidence had been washed away. In court, the medical examiner testified that Marianne died from manual strangulation, even though her hyoid bone wasn't broken. The defense seized on that, pointing out it was unusual in strangulation cases, planting seeds of doubt. Marcus's lawyer even tried to float the theory that Clark Heindel, the therapist's friend who later died by suicide, might have been the one who killed Marianne. Prosecutors called it nonsense, saying there was zero evidence anyone but Marcus was responsible. Defense attorney Matt Tucker kept pushing this idea, however. He told the jury that Marcus believed Clark had tried to make a move on Marianne. She rejected him, and that's when Clark supposedly strangled her to death, thus ending his own life because of his guilt. But prosecutors stood firm. There was nothing to back that up. Then came the letter. No, not Clark's handwritten suicide note, but a letter Marianne wrote. Prosecutors brought Marianne's sister, Ayla, to the stand to read a letter Marianne had written to herself before she died. In her own letter, Marianne reflected on picking the wrong men, specifically naming Marcus, writing, "When he does that white lady," meaning cocaine, "he gets violent." In the letter, she also wrote this, "And still I go. I know he isn't right for me." Tragically prophetic, prosecutors argued, but the letter was partially burned by Marianne's father before the trial, so jurors only heard fragments. Tests showed Marcus had cocaine in his system the night Marianne died, but no one could say exactly when he took it. Marcus's defense suggested a different cause of death entirely. Ecstasy, alcohol, marijuana, and a hot tub heated to 107 degrees, hotter than it should have been, had created a deadly mix that resulted in the UGA professor's death. During questioning, Marcus claims he hadn't taken regular drugs that night, insisting the ecstasy was super potent and made with evil hands. When asked why he believed it was evil, he replied quietly, "Well, it killed 2 people." Marcus's defense team pressed the medical examiner. that didn't have a factor with the body temperature being that high, with having the high levels of MDMA in her system, with them being drinking all day. This had nothing to do with it. The defense noted that Marianne also had an enlarged heart, which can lead to sudden cardiac death. It was enough to raise questions, resulting in the jury to have some doubt. The 48 Hours team later sent Marianne's autopsy to Dr. Greg Davis, a forensic pathologist unaffiliated with the case. He said it was possible Marianne was strangled, but also believed there was a valid competing cause of death, citing the drugs, alcohol, and heart condition. But he wouldn't have called it a homicide, telling the 48 Hours team. He would have classified Marianne's death as undetermined. Despite this, the team called no medical experts and Marcus never took the stand. After just 38 minutes of deliberation, literally less than an hour, the jury returned with a verdict, not guilty on all charges.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you will publish the verdict. In the Superior Court of Baldwin County, State of Georgia versus Marcus Allen Lillard. As to count 1, felony murder, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. As to count 2, ag assault, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. As to count 3, involuntary manslaughter, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. As to count 4, reckless conduct, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. The 8th day of April 2022, Reuben J. Miller Fuller. All right, you go display that to the state, and this number, if you all take a look at that and tell me.
Marianne's family was devastated. Everyone was shocked. Her sister Ayla said they were in disbelief. Marcus's own son, Carson, couldn't believe that his father walked free. Even one juror admitted she thought Marcus was immediately guilty when the trial first started. But in the end, she said the prosecutors didn't prove he was a killer beyond a reasonable doubt.
I felt like the prosecuting attorney, she painted the picture that Marcus Lillard was a womanizer. He was a narcissist, but they didn't prove that he was a killer.
What do you think happened to Marianne Shockley that night?
I don't know what happened. That frustrated me because we don't know what happened to her. Or if she really was strangled, if she died from strangulation, who strangled her?
So it sounds like you even question if there was a murder in the first place.
I have my doubts about that.
After the verdict, the judge told Marcus she ultimately disagreed with the jury's decision, saying he only cared about himself that night, thus why it took him so long to call 911. She revoked his probation on a prior drug charge, sending him back to prison, where he is today, and where he could remain until 2030. However, it is likely he could be released sooner. Marianne's children later settled a wrongful death lawsuit against Clark Heindel's estate for $500,000, but there was never any admission of fault or guilt. To this day, Marianne's family feels she never got justice. They don't know what really happened to her in that hot tub, and the man they believed took her life walked out of court a free man.
Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. With each one, my heart just kind of sunk lower and lower. I thought there was no way that he could get off.
We were in utter shock. Everyone was shocked. And of course, I look over at Marcus and he's got a smirk on his face. And my blood was boiling.
Online sleuths have poured over every detail of this case. Many convinced that the real killer is still free. In countless forums and comment threads, people continue to debate whether justice truly died with Clark, or if the man responsible is still walking free today. But what is clear is the impact Marianne left behind. Her family and friends still think about the professor who made everyone around her feel seen. Her contagious, bright smile, her knowledge, her love of life. Her students remembered the professor who cared about even the smallest creatures on this planet. But Marianne's family would face even more unthinkable loss in the years after her death. In December 2022, her eldest son, Paul Shockley Stevens, passed away at just 21 years old after complications with pneumonia. Like his mother, Paul was a gentle soul with a gift for nurturing others, spending his summers alongside his younger sister, Nora, as counselors at the University of Georgia's Bug Camp, a place that had always connected them to their mom's passion. His mother often called him her gentle giant, a fitting reflection of his strength wrapped in softness. It's heartbreakingly clear that Marianne's love for science, for community, and most of all for her children lived on in Paul and Nora, The loss of both Marianne and Paul has left a deep ache for the family and all who knew them. And to this day, Marcus still proclaims his innocence.
Well, my conscience is very clear when it comes to Marianne. Do I miss Marianne? Yeah. I was lucky to get that time with her that I did. And I cherish that.
In a case that deputies call one of the strangest they've ever seen, the truth about what happened to Marianne Shockley may never fully be known. But as her family said in a statement days after the verdict, our lives will never be the same, but Marianne Shockley's impact on everyone who knew her will live on forever. A bright mind, a kind heart, a life dedicated to caring for others, and a death that remains even now without a clear answer. Probably the most heartbreaking part of this case is that no matter who killed Marianne Shockley, whether it was her boyfriend or her friend, she still hasn't received the justice she deserves. This was a woman who put her children before anything else, who inspired countless young scientists, who cared deeply for the planets and every living creature she encountered. She was someone making the world a better place, one student, one insect, one conversation at a time. Yet to this day, no one has been held accountable for her death. But one thing is clear, what first appeared to be a tragic accident was not. The autopsy shows she was murdered, but by whom? We may never truly know. Did the answers die with Clark Heindel that night, taking the truth with him to the grave? Or is the real killer still alive, walking free, the only living witness to what really happened that night in the hot tub? It's a haunting question that keeps Marianne's family awake, knowing they may never get the answers they deserve. If deputies had kept a closer watch on Clark that night, maybe he wouldn't have taken his own life. Maybe we would know the truth. What began as a gathering of 3 ended with only one person left to tell the story. If Clark were still alive, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Perhaps Marianne would have finally received justice. But now, her family may never know exactly what happened to the smart, loving, kind professor they lost. Her children may never see the accountability their mother deserved. And yet, Marianne's impact on the world continues. Her research still guides scientists who followed in her footsteps. Her students still carry her passion for discovery onto their own classrooms and labs. Her family and friends still remember her as the woman who made everyone feel seen, who brought light wherever she went, who believed that every small creature mattered, and that every life could make a difference. Marianne Shockley left this world too soon, and the truth of what happened that night may never fully come to light. But her legacy, her love, her family, her passion for science and for the planet, those remain. This has been Joshua John with Behind the Headlines, and until next time, stay safe.